As I mentioned, a recent AP National Opinion Research Center poll revealed that nearly half of adults that identify as Democrats do not think schools should reopen, while only 14% of Republican adults share the same view. Overall, half say they should open with major adjustments. Now, the partisan divide is not surprising. Everything in this country is divided. But the focus of those who are opposed to reopening the schools is the coronavirus, not what is actually happening in the classrooms. Personally, I think the polling should be reversed. I think more conservatives, if they actually knew what children were being taught and exposed to in our schools, would be opposed to schools reopening. In fact, they would see this as a revolutionary moment in public education. So, what is happening in those classrooms? Here with the results of a multi-year engagement with public school curriculum is Cathy Ruse. She is Senior Fellow and Director for Human Dignity at Family Research Council and author of a recent publication entitled Sex Education in Public Schools, Sexualizing of Children and the LGBT Indoctrination. Cathy, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you so much, Tony.
All right, I'm going to jump right into it. What is happening behind the closed doors of the classrooms of America?
Well, you're right to emphasize closed doors because most public schools that I studied do not want parents to know what is happening behind those closed doors. What we are seeing public schools doing across the country is adopting a new approach to sex ed. Sex ed is not what any parent really thinks it is. It is today all about sexual rights on the behalf of children. It's about promoting a radical sexual ideology on the part of children, and it is about pushing a very dangerous concept on kids, which is the idea that they could be born in the wrong body. So transgender ideology is being pushed on kids in public schools today, and most of these things parents don't know about because, like I said, parents aren't supposed to know about it. It works better when parents don't know. So we're trying to let as many parents as possible know really what's going on in these public schools.
Now, when you talk about this radical sex education program, now, I just for a frame of reference, most adults, who were in school and had a sex ed class, it was like this, 1 hour curriculum box that they had to check where they had a football coach or a basketball coach taught this course. Also, they did driver's ed or something else like that, too. This is permeating every aspect of education. This is not just a standalone course. This is finding its way into every aspect of the classroom.
It is. And one parent I talked to said it best, which is even if you can protect your kids from a bad sex ed class, in public schools, it's everywhere. The kids are swimming in it, was the phrase she used, and she's so right. And we can talk about exactly how that's happening, but I want to say first that that the word that parents, or the phrase that parents should be watching out for, is comprehensive sexual education, which sounds reasonable maybe to the untrained ear, but it's being pushed by really rich, powerful international pressure groups that are using sex ed as a vehicle to do some very damaging things to kids, manipulating kids. The leader in the industry is a group called SECUS, which is the Sexuality Information Education Center. They have now rebranded, and their new brand is Sex Ed for Social Change. And what that means is they're actually quite upfront about what they're doing when you scratch the surface a little bit. Sex Ed for Social Change is using sex ed as a vehicle to get young people to affirm alternative identities. It's a vehicle for racial justice, a vehicle for LGBT equality, a vehicle for reproductive justice, which is abortion, a vehicle to fight white supremacy, in their words. So it's all of these social cultural issues, Marxist issues, if you want to really look at their approach. And sex ed is the gateway to all of that, to manipulating kids on all of these issues. So sex ed is really not even about sex ed anymore. It's about transforming and manipulating kids.
So, Cathy Ruse, you have been working on this now for a number of years. You kind of began looking at curriculum in Virginia, but now you're finding that this is in schools all across America. There's almost no school district that's immune from the reach of these groups that are pushing a leftist agenda.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, my focus in my profession has been national politics and policy, pro-life, pro-family, pro-religious freedom. I started noticing what was happening in my own school district when I heard about them opening girls' bathrooms and showers to boys. So that kind of got my attention years ago. But it dawned on me, Tony, that as we were focusing on what's happening in Congress, what's happening even at the state level, right down the street at our local public schools, there was a spiritual battle raging over the next generation. And our side wasn't really showing up. And the sexual nihilists, the extreme leftists, they were there in force, and they're transforming the next generation of Americans in their own image, and we have got to get on the battlefield. So I have really rethought in my own work kind of where the really important flashpoints are for the culture, and we all have to get involved with what's happening in our local public schools, even if, like in our family, even if your kids don't go to that public school. We don't send our daughters to public school, and yet the next generation of people that are going to impact my family, my city, my state, are being trained in these public schools. And so we've all got to really pay attention. And yes, it's happening all across the country.
An extremely important point to make. And folks, in this program, we're going to be talking about the problems in education and the options available to parents. But in the second part of this program, we're going to be talking about how we have to impact public education and options that are available. There's Cathy, the way I look at it, we did not send our kids to public education. We homeschooled all 5 of our children, but we don't think we should abandon the public education system. In fact, we encourage Christians to go in as teachers and Christians to run for school boards, because we've got to be there to make sure, or at least to try to stop this indoctrination that's taking place of children. And, I know some will say, well, you're just focusing on sex ed, but I want to, again, emphasize that this is in every aspect of the curriculum. You talk about the bathroom policies, the locker rooms, and just the whole idea of gender identity and the sexual confusion that is being pushed in every aspect. But in the pamphlet that you put together, the paper that you put together, that's available, by the way, folks, at tonyperkins.com, looking at this comprehensive sex education, I mean, you basically say that this is how to have sex workshops for kids.
Yes, they are teaching children how to consent to sex, how to pleasure your sex partner, how to get a secret abortion. I mean, it is beyond shocking. And then again, the really huge game changer is teaching kids they could be born in the wrong body. Some of these policies that are being implemented beyond the sex ed class are school-wide, where policies are requiring everybody in the school to lie to a child and to say, yes, you really are a little girl, even though it's a boy. Yes, you are in the wrong body. Yes, forcing children to use false pronouns for students or teachers. This is a very, very serious matter, especially with Christian children. When Christian children are forced to either pronounce their own pronouns or to use false pronouns for others, that's really a form of religious conversion.
Yeah.
We don't believe that. We believe in God's purposeful creation of male and female. And when we Christians are forced by our words to affirm this false thing, it's really forced conversion. That's my conclusion. I mean, it's super serious.
Yes.
So it's happening we see the clubs that are being set up in schools, the gay straight alliance clubs, which come to dominate the culture of a school. We see these horrible NEA posters. You talk about the National Education Association. Posters in every classroom they want to see, making kids affirm that they are either transgender allies, or if they're not, that makes them bullies.
Right.
You know, the psychological manipulation that's well beyond sex ed class all throughout these schools. Kids are swimming in it.
And there are options for parents, and we're going to talk about those coming up. Cathy Ruse, thanks so much for joining us and appreciate the great work you do.
Thank you, Tony.